Keepers nervous, strikers, they'll deliver. Crowd roars erupted, you can feel the quake. 80,000 voices.
When the season started, Chelsea was on superb form, only dropping points, significant points that is, to Manchester City, the champions of the Premier League, of champions of England, and Liverpool, league leaders. So for me, and for a lot of fans, a lot of pundits out there, that was expected, that was normal. But outside of those two teams, Chelsea were really on top form, brushing aside all comers. At some point, people were thinking Chelsea would be would be fighting or challenging for a league title. But now it's gone so wrong. Losing, to the fifth place team in the Polish league, in Legia Warsaw, in the UEFA Conference League, although ultimately qualifying for, the semi-final of the competition. And right now, it seems Chelsea has a tough fight on their hands to even get into Champions League places for next season, even with the fifth spot guaranteed, as the fifth place team guaranteed to be going into qualifying for the Champions League. So Chelsea, how did it all go wrong? Where has it gone so wrong for Chelsea after starting so well at the beginning of the season? For me, I think the combination of factors. I know some people like to blame the players, some people like to blame Enzo Maresca solely, some will blame, the board, Todd Boehly, Clearlake Capital, Egbali, Feliciano, and the likes. Now, for me, I think it's a combination of factors. First off, I'll start with the board. I'll start with Clearlake, I'll start with Todd Boehly, Feliciano, Egbali, Paul Winstanley, and the likes. Poor recruitment. It has to be said. Poor recruitment. Now, while a lot of players had potential, have ability, have high ceiling, the way certain areas were ignored. Certain areas that needed strengthening were ignored in spite of some fine recruitment here and there. For instance, Malo Gusto, good signing from 2 seasons ago. Jack Felix, I think, could have contributed even more this season, but now he's on loan at AC Milan. So you've had Mike Pender signed, although he's on loan at Genk. You turn back to his parent club and he's on loan there. So just fine, decent signings made. But how many of these decent signings could actually help the team? Now, Gallagher, for me, I don't think was a Chelsea player in terms of what he could bring to the pitch. He had a fight, he was a Coburn product, so he left Atletico Madrid. And then Dewsbury Hall was signed in his place and has turned out to be not that much better than Gallagher, in my opinion. So the recruitment itself has been really poor. But the most unforgivable thing, of the transfer window was not signing a striker of any sort, not signing a striker of any note, and especially not signing Victor Osimhen, a world-class striker, when it was just served up on the plate. Every other team was, had their focus, on other areas in their own team. For instance, Man City, they have Erling Haaland, so there's no point trying to sign a striker. For Arsenal, for whatever reason, felt that Kai Havertz was the man to go with, into the season. Manchester United already had Højlund, in their team, so they weren't at that moment looking for a striker. So Chelsea had the opportunity. In basketball terms, it was called an absolute layup to sign Victor Osimhen, the Nigerian international. But unfortunately, the focus was on other things like, let's get the PR out. Maybe we could force him to accept way lower wages. Let's dilly-dally and play sort of weird games with Napoli, and then you ended up not signing him and he went to Galatasaray instead. Now, even if you didn't sign Victor Osimhen, you should have signed other strikers. You should have looked at maybe a Tieno Barry, for instance, because any way you look at it, Nicholas Jackson has shown that no, he's not quite that striker. He's not quite that striker. And you refuse to get a striker in. You had Samuel Morogion through the door. Samuel Morogion was through the door, who was ready to come do. He has already done the first phase of his medicals. You've already heard, here we go, from someone like an informed person like Fabrizio Romano. So all we were expecting was an unveiling of Omorodion. But what did we get instead? For some weird reason, they came up with this who want to own 50% of the player's image rights and scuttled the whole deal. All just because you wanted to go on to sign a João Felix. And now, while for me, I'm one of the biggest, what I say, cheerleaders or pro supporters of João Felix, he wasn't a signing that was particularly needed. His profile of player wasn't what Chelsea needed at that point. Samuel Morojon was more of a better fit in terms of profile. Big, fast, strong, number 9. He was there, and you didn't sign him, you signed a João Felix instead. So the question is, why did you sign João Felix? Was it to appease George Mendes? This definitely will never have happened under Roman, because no, definitely agent fees were paid under Roman as usual, as part recognized by football law, football regulations. But signing a player just to make an agent feel good, feel nice, feel happy with you, that would never have happened. But that happened, under Paul Winstanley and Lawrence Stewart, and ultimately under the administration of Clearlake and Blueco. Clearlake Blueco, whichever had one to call themselves. But it happened under their watch. So poor recruitment. Poor recruitment. You didn't get an experienced centre back when you needed one. You didn't get a goalkeeper when you needed one, because Rob Sanchez had showed you the previous season that he wasn't that good. And then you sold the better keeper that was obviously better, than Robert Sanchez. You loaned him off to Strasbourg. Why? Now, some people say Enzo Maresca looked at some data and said he wasn't good enough. Maybe that's it. But I think he had a bit of the board and Enzo Maresca were contributing factors to Petrovic leaving and having Robert Sanchez stay. Even when everyone and their dog knew that, Robert Sanchez wasn't good enough, was very poor, had been very poor the previous season, but he was still kept. Now, so that's for the board. That's for Clearlake. Poor recruitment. Now, the next place to lay the blame at the feet of is the coach, Enzo Maresca. Yes, he was getting the praise. Yes, I was praising him. And I'm sure other fans as well were praising, Enzo Maresca for his fine play. I mean, for how the team was playing very well, scoring lots of goals, destroying teams, dismantling teams with very exciting play. But one thing about football, that if you've watched football for any significant length of time, you would know this, that there is no formation, there is no tactics that is impervious on its own. There's no style of play that can't be deconstructed. There's no style of play that can't be challenged. There's no style of play that, someone else can come up with the tactics to counter. But what makes an allied coach stand above, a very good coach or a decent coach is how he responds to those tactical challenges put before him or presented by, opposing player, by the opponent, by the opposing coach. If you, for instance, Maresca, you've chosen to invert your players. Your fullbacks. Okay, you invert the fullbacks. But if the opposition manager for Fulham, for instance, they're going to play on Sunday, or the Legia Warsaw you played the last game, decides that, okay, you know what's going to happen? We are going to choke that midfield. We're going to have like 2 or 3 central defensive midfielders in there, in addition to the 2 centre backs that we have there. And we are also going to invert our own fullbacks in a defensive way. So what do you do? Do you look at it and then respond and say, okay, you want to try this tactics with me, I'll respond in this way. Okay, fullbacks, I know I've told you to always invert, but can you go out wide this time around? Go out wide and give them something different to think about. But no, that has not happened. Instead, he's doubled down even more and come up with even crazier tactics, even crazier, ways of playing. For instance, you have one of the best right backs in the world in Reece James. You have him playing at left back sometimes. You have him playing as a six. When you have a Caicedo, when you have an Enzo Fernandez, so what does that mean? What do you intend to achieve by playing people out of position? In the last game, you took off Cucurella, who was one of the best players on the pitch when you knew that Chelsea was looking for a goal. You took him off. Not only did you take him off, you ended up bringing a right back to play at left back. So what is the point? There are a lot of people who have their different factions that they support, sort of like some weird political structure. You have those that support Clearlake, you have those that support Enzo Maresca, you have those that support certain players. And I'm sure those that support Enzo Maresca will be looking at me and saying, oh no, the recruitment was poor. Yes, the recruitment was poor to some extent. But Enzo Maresca, as a coach, the best way you show up poor recruitment by the board is by playing players, the quality of players they've signed for you, in their rightful position. And when the players you play in the rightful position struggle, then you can say to the world, you see, I played Jackson as a striker, he's struggling. I played Malo Gusto as a right back, he's struggling. I want him to overlap, play to his strengths, but he is struggling. I've got Cruella, I'm playing him as a left back, let him play. I want him to play his best, but he is struggling. So, you see, it's not my fault. It's the recruitment, is the board, is the sporting directors that have recruited poorly. But no, Enzo Maresca doesn't do that. He's choosing to play players out of position for what? And this is what I think he's suffering from, this modern coach syndrome. Everyone wants to be the coach that sort of changes the game, the one that revolutionizes the game. Rather than keeping things simple, we want to come up with some new weird tactics. We're going to pass it from the back no matter what. Even if we have people sitting right on our heads, we will play short passes out from the back. Even if, we're playing a player out of position, he must play out of position there. Even when you're having someone like Pedro Neto, who his best position is an orthodox left winger, you play him as a right back. So he's doing all these things, talking about philosophy, my style of playing, and then acting like that's some sort of, divine football tactics that everyone must aspire to, the Enzo Maresca way. That is just silly. That stubbornness has cost Chelsea points, have cost Chelsea games that Chelsea ordinarily win, because Enzo Maresca has just been too stubborn, in my opinion, to get things right. Because sometimes when you're playing a game, it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to defend, play with 6 men at the back, or play with 10 men behind the ball. Sometimes you adapt to fit, to counteract what the opponent has put before you. And then you have, your wingers who are inverted, and then you take away the fullbacks that are meant to give them that support. You look at PSG, look at how they play. All the teams you're talking about that people want to praise for possession football, look at how they use their fullbacks. So Enzo Maresca tactically has been way too stubborn for his own good and for the good of Chelsea. He has been struggling. People will say, do you want him sacked? Not really. But I'm indifferent. If he gets sacked, he gets sacked. People get sacked every day. People earning £10,000 a year get sacked. People in Nigeria that earn, maybe 100,000 naira a month get sacked. They get sacked. You don't perform, you get the boot. If he doesn't perform, he can get sacked. That's it. And when you willfully playing players out of position, it doesn't put you in the right light before your fans, the ownership group. It doesn't. It makes you look bad, and it makes you also, it sets you up as a fall guy for the ownership group, for the board, because rather than focusing solely on the board for poor recruitment, they now focus on you for playing players out of position. So his stubbornness has cost Chelsea. Now the last, definitely not least, because they are all equal contributors to this, the players. Certain players have regressed in such a way is shocking. Some of them haven't even shown signs of progressing. Now, one that we must talk about is Nicholas Jackson. Nicholas Jackson, early part of the season, he went on a fine run, scored was it 7 goals, and then later on scored about 3 more goals to give him to score about 2 more goals to take his goal tally to 9. But ever since then, he hasn't scored anymore. And then one of the issues that people don't get about Nicholas Jackson is one, he shows zero awareness in the box. He hasn't shown any improvement in that regard. Not at all. He hasn't shown any improvement in the technique, in his ball striking technique in the box. Sometimes he shoots volleys, he's falling away from the ball. There's no way you can score a goal whilst you're falling away, you're taking a shot and you're falling away from the ball. He hasn't shown any improvement in that regard. That's why I've said on different videos that probably his best position should be out wide on the left where he can use his pace. But playing as a striker, he's just not cutting it. People have chosen to blame the likes of Noni Madueke, for crossing balls. They blame the crosses that they put into the box. Or the cross wasn't that good. But you see crosses flash across goal. Nicholas Jackson wouldn't be present. You see him have 1v1 versus goalkeepers. He misses it, smashes the ball against the woodwork. And then this ties into the board. Nicholas Jackson has struggled as a striker the past season and a bit. You know that clearly. And even if you add under Potter's tenure, you needed a striker, and you did not prioritize signing a striker. So that's in that aspect he's wrong. So that's about Nicholas Jackson. He has regressed, really, really regressed in terms of his finishing and in-box awareness, and that will cost you goals, asking a striker. Then we're talking about Cole Palmer. Yes, we have to talk about Cole Palmer. Cole Palmer is Chelsea's most important player and arguably Chelsea's best player. But at some point in the season, Cole Palmer began to show signs of regression, and I pointed this out. And then people started saying, "Oh, how can you criticize Cole Palmer? He's Chelsea's best player. He would leave the club," and all that stuff. Yes, he's Chelsea's best player, but nobody is perfect. Nobody, is beyond being criticized. Your game should be picked apart. Cole Palmer has always been playing, but certain things started creeping into his game. Number one, and this is the most important one, holding on to the ball too long. I'm sure maybe he was trying to get confidence, trying to show that, yes, since I'm the main man, I want to take responsibility for this team. Everything should flow through me. But sometimes in football, things flowing through you doesn't mean you must be the one to take that shot. Things flowing through you doesn't mean you must be the one to give that killer pass, that immediate pass that leads directly to the goal. You can control the game. Take it easy. Be calm. Let things flow through you normally. But he cost Chelsea the game versus Fulham. People turned a blind eye to it. He cost Chelsea the game versus Crystal Palace. People turned a blind eye to it. Now I think the problem with Cole Palmer, I think, is quite easily solved. And how would it be solved? Simple. Calm down, take yourself back, and just let the game come to you. Be calm. Lay the ball off when you just make the right play. The goals will come. But every other thing, Enzo Maresca, I think there's a saying, you can't teach old dogs new tricks. He has to learn new tricks quickly, because football, once you say you have one style of play and you don't want to change and you're too stubborn, you're going to get found out. Because he says Pep Guardiola is his mentor, or he learned a lot from Enzo from Pep Guardiola. But people forget the Barcelona side that Maresca said he played against. Their fullbacks were almost wingers, flying up and down the flank. Then Guardiola has come to England. He never used to have this tall, giant striker apart from Zlatan. Now he has Haaland. So Enzo Maresca has to wisen up and become more dynamic in how he sets up his team, and become more dynamic in how he reacts to opponents. So Cole Palmer, take it easy, calm down, and things will come to you. And the board, your recruitment process, your recruitment strategy has to change. You can't keep going for 19-year-olds, 17-year-olds that can't help the team win now. So I think going into the summer window, Clearlake Capital, Blue Co, Bali, whoever is responsible for transfer recruitment should ensure that they get some experienced players through the door. Like Victor Osimhen, for instance. So at this point, I've come to the end of the video. I want to know what your thoughts and opinions are. Please subscribe to the channel, share, like, and do all that good stuff. And I'll see you on yet another video. Stay well and stay blessed. Bye bye.